So here is the outline of the course. First, I shall discuss about what is nanomaterial and how small it is. Then I shall discuss about various phenomena happening at nanoscale. Why these materials are important. Then I shall discuss about the general properties of nanomaterials and if this is really a new technology or not, that I shall discuss. And I shall also focus on various natural nanostructures also. In the second part of this lecture, I shall discuss about the length scale in nanoscience, that I will be elaborating in detail, and then discuss about the classification of various nanomaterials, and will highlight on the basic difference between nanoscience and nanotechnology, nanobiotechnology, and bio-nanotechnology. And finally, I shall discuss the advantages and applications of nanomaterials. So let us first begin the nanoscale. So what is nano? Nano is a Greek word which is used to define what, that is a very small object. So the term nano was first coined by Norio Taniguchi in 1974. Technically, we mean nano means 1 billion, that is 10 to the power minus 9 of a unit. So a nanometer is basically 10 to the power minus 9 of a meter. But how small this 10 to the power minus 9 is? To have an idea, let us first look into the length scale. We shall start from various macro objects and then scale down by decade to nanoscale. So I found that most of the students are from physics, chemistry, biology and environmental science background, and all have already attended class 12 physical science laboratory. So you must have seen a meter scale so that you can realize how long a meter is. Also, to realize, if you consider a boy of 6 to 7 years, that's the length what is called a meter. And if we divide by 10 and take one part of that, that is the wide width of our hand palm, which is about 10 centimeters. It's also the size of a big size apple. If you cut into 10 pieces and take one part of that, then we will have the width of our finger, which is 1 centimeter. It is also the size of the piece and also the size of ants. You can see everywhere. If you take 1/10 of that, then you will have the thickness of a nail, which is about 1 millimeter. This is also the thickness of the optical fibers that you can find in any market showing the fine fiber lighting. If we take 1/10 of that, then we can find the human hair, which has the diameter 100 micrometer long. So these are the macro scale object that can be observed through our naked eye, and we do not need any kind of microscope to observe these structures. So these are all basically macro scale structures. But if we go or scale down much below than that, then we cannot view these structures by naked eye. We need to use some microscopes. So let us start with this human hair, which has diameter about 100 micron, and now take 1/10 of that. That's the size of the red blood corpuscle in our blood. and the corpuscles have diameter about 10 micrometer. I think all of you have done this imaging using optical microscope in your biology laboratory class in class 12. And if we scale down to 1/10 of that, it's the bacteria, which has the size about 1 micrometer. Scale down to 1/10 of that, you have the virus, and the coronavirus has found to have diameters about 100 to 200 nanometers. If we take 1/10 of that, so we scale down to 100, scale down to 1 nanometer, which is equal to the half the weight of a DNA. Also, if you think, if you have a hydrogen atom and if you place 10 hydrogen atoms side by side, the size will be 1 nanometer. And if you take a hydrogen molecule where only 2 hydrogen atoms are residing side by side with their covalent bonds, then the size is about 0.1 nanometer. So we can realize how small a nanoscale is. So we have already mentioned the nano is used to define small objects. But is it really small? I mean, is it only used to define only small objects, or is there anything else? In 1959, Richard Feynman, in the meeting of the American Physical Society at the California Institute of Technology, said, there is plenty of room at the bottom, which means you can play with the smaller objects like atoms or electrons, and the technology will have a great revolution. Since then, scientists are trying altogether to study smaller objects to play in the smaller length scale. So this left first image shows a floppy disk. I think most of the students presently they do not have seen this because these are very old technologies. So however, this floppy disk was developed in around 1950s. So in 1969, the size of this floppy disk was about 8 inch by 8 inch, and it can store 80 kilobyte of data. And by miniaturization, in 1999, the size of this floppy disk becomes 3.5 cross 3.5. We say 3.5 inch floppy, which can store only 200 MB data. Can you imagine? Even if you have a very good resolution mobile phone, you cannot store a single image in this floppy. But nowadays the technology has changed. We have the flash drives, memory chips, hard drives, etc., whose memory size is very large. We already have 34 2GB, 64 GB of flash drives and memory chips for our mobiles also, and 1 terabyte capacity of hard drive in our computers and laptops. So, with the advent of science and technology, the size of the device is getting smaller and smaller, and more and more information can be stored in these small objects. So, what is different in nano? To understand, just take a pen in your hand and release it. It will fall in the ground due to the gravity force, but gravity doesn't work in nanoscale. Even the viscous drag for a nanoparticle is completely different from large particle that we have already studied in our basic fluid mechanics. So friction also has a different role in nanoscale surface. In fact, in case of nanoscale surfaces, the friction is very, very small, almost zero. Besides, the energy spectrum of the electrons gets drastically changed. That I will discuss in the subsequent section. And this change in the electronic energy spectrum leads to various interesting property exhibited by these nanomaterials. So, what exactly makes the nanomaterials to behave differently from other materials? This can be realized by understanding two basic concepts that happens in nanoscale. The two phenomena are surface to volume ratio and the quantum confinement. So let us enter more into these 2 points. So surface to volume ratio, what is that? We have an object, suppose here we have a cube of size 20 centimeter by 20 centimeter by 20 centimeter, and we calculate the ratio of its surface to the volume. Its volume is 20 into 20 into 20 cubic centimeter, and its surface area is one side is 20 cross 20, that is 400 centimeter square, and it has 6 surface, that is 2400 centimeter square. So this is the surface to volume ratio. If I cut the same cube in 8 parts, then each part will have size about 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, and the entire surface area of this one cube will be 10 cross 10, and just 6 surface into 6, and total 8 cube into 8, that is 4800, that is 4800 centimeters square. So earlier it was 2400 centimeters square. So the area has get doubled by dividing it into 8 parts. Now if we divide it more, then more and more surface area will be exposed. If we divide it by 8 cube, then each of the cube will have size 2.5 centimeter, and now if you can calculate the surface area, it will be 8 times larger than the first one. However, the volume remains same. If you divide this cube by 8 to the power 4, then each cube will have size 1.25 centimeters, and now the surface area will be 16 times larger. So divide by 10 to the power 21, you will have each smaller cube has size 20 nanometer by 20 nanometer by 20 nanometer. So the surface area has increased a lot. You can figure out this number. So a large enhancement of the surface area happened, although the volume of the entire material remains same. So when we go to nanoscale objects, the surface area enhances, although the volume remains same in the bulk material. So what will be its effect? To understand, let us take some cluster cells. Here we have a one cell cluster which is comprising of 13 atoms, and you can do a little bit calculations, and you can see that almost 92%, almost 10 or 11 atoms will reside on the surface. If you take two clusters atoms, the number of atoms will be 55, and the percentage of surface atom is 66. If we enhance the size more and more, if we go to 7 cluster cells, we see the total number of atoms is 1415, but the number of surface atoms is only 35% of this. So if we reduce the size from the 7 cells to 1 cell, the percentage of surface atoms goes on increasing from 35 to 95. That means more and more number of surface atoms will be exposed to the surroundings. So what will be its effect? If more surface atoms are exposed to the outer side. So the advantages of this large surface effect of the nanomaterials are, already I have discussed, it has a large surface area, so more and more number of atoms are lying on the surface, but These atoms are quickly bound to the core atoms by weak dangling valence orbitals. And these weakly bound atoms have higher energy. So these atoms will be chemically more reactive than other atoms. Due to this, they serve as better catalyst, enhance surface scattering, lower electrical conductivity, increase solubility, and enhance hydrogen storage capacity. Also, as the large material being cut into small pieces, being broken into very small nanoscales, so more and more hidden surface atoms are exposed. So they also show enhanced gas and chemical sensing response, and also their sensitivity to these sensors will increase. So self-cleaning is also another important issue associated with the nanomaterials, and I'll be discussed more detail about the self-cleaning in the application section. So to understand these large surface effects, let us see a simple experiment. Although this is not at nanoscale, microscale, but it will give you an idea how the properties drastically change in nanoscale. So we start a simple experiment. So here I have taken two glass with commonly and I am showing some discipline tablets that are commonly available in the market. You can buy also from any pharmacy, and we take water in two similar type glasses, ordinary water, and now I put this discipline tablet into this water, the entire tablet. Now let's see what happens. So I am taking one discipline tablet and putting it into the water of the glass, and now I will check how much time it will take this water. So I have just dropped the discipline tablet in the glass, and you see the tablet is getting dissolved in the water. So the dissolution is very fast, but still it's dissolving. So let's wait for a few more seconds till the entire tablet gets dissolved. The tablet is still dissolving, so let's wait for some more time. So the tablet has now reached the top, it becomes lighter, and now I think it's almost dissolved. It has already dissolved. The time, let's see what is the time. And the time is 49.14 seconds, that is taken from our mobile clock. Now, let's do the same experiment with the discipline tablet crushed into powders. So, I shall put the crushed discipline tablet into the another glass, and now I shall check how much time it will take to get dissolved in the water. So, I have put the discipline powders in the glass, and I can see that the powder has already started dissolve instantly. So also wait for a few seconds so the resolutions become uniform. So it's approximately 4-5 seconds. Okay. Maximum 10 seconds. So it clearly indicates that well okay, now it's completely dissolved. So the time is approximately, you can also count it around 10 seconds. So what it reveals that if we have smaller size particle, although they have same volume, as we have crushed the tablet, the surface area becomes larger, more and more atoms are exposed to water, so the dissolution rate increases, the surface activity increases. So any property associated with the surface atom of a material will get enhanced due to this large surface effect. So the surface effects in nature, there are many examples where we can study these surface effects. In the polar region, most of the animal creatures have very large size because, as we have learned, in the same volume, larger size have lower surface area, so heat loss in the cold atmosphere will be less. So they require less amount of food to survive in those polar regions. So that's a beautiful example of surface effect in nature. We shall discuss about the second effect, which is about the quantum confinement effect. The second important phenomena existing in nanoscale material which modulates the properties of materials at nanoscale. So, before entering into the details of this quantum confinement, let us first have two important questions. Does all metals always behave like metals? And we know gold is very shiny and inactive. That's why these are used in jewelry. So consider an electron bound in this potential box. As we have already learned in physics that the photons or light behaves as particle and it also behaves like wave. Similarly, various subatomic particles like electrons, protons, neutrons, beam particles, they also behave like wave. So we shall study here the property of these electrons when they bound in one-dimensional box. And the box, to describe this box, the left end is at x equal to 0 and the right end is at x equal to L, and the potential is 0 inside this box and it's infinite outside the box, so that the electron cannot go out of the box. Now we can write the Schrodinger equation for this electron as this. So potential is 0 within this box. So this is the Schrodinger equation, d2 psi gx2 plus 2 m star over h cross square is I equal to 0. And if we take this 2 m star by h cross square e equal to k square, so it will reduce to this equation. And this is a very common and simple differential equation we have made elsewhere in physics, chemistry and biology also. And we can solve this equation very easily. So the solution is psi equal to root 2 by L sin n pi x by L. And so this is actually the value of k, n pi by L, that is the k, and this value of k was obtained by using the boundary condition, that is the continuity of psi and its first order derivative at the boundary. Those who have already read the quantum mechanics, they can learn it very easily. So using this k value, k equal to n pi by L, we can get from this energy expression as En equal to m square h cross square pi square by 2m L square. Here L is the size of the box. So we see that this energy is basically inversely proportional to L square. So if we see as the size of the box decreases, the energy increases. Here I have shown the energy levels of different states, n equal to 1, which corresponds to the ground states, the first excited state, the second excited states, and the corresponding wave functions are there. A detailed mathematics of this problem will be discussed in our second webinar on quantum nanoengineering, but for the time being, let us assume this one. So, if we consider the realistic case, that is when the particle is confined in a three-dimensional box, so the situations will be like this. The wave functions will be represented by this. Only the x part, y part and z part has been added, and this Lx, Ly and Lz are the length of the box along three directions X, Y, and Z. So the energy gets quantized in all these three directions. Besides, we also see that if we take a cubical box, then let's Ly Lz equal to L, then this in this bracket we have n1 square, nx square plus ny square plus n square. So we see for different combination of nx, y, nz, it may have same value. Suppose if nx equal to 2, ny equal to 1, nz equal to 1, or nx equal to 1, ny equal to 2, nz equal to 1, or nx equal to ny equal to 1 and nz equal to 2, it will have the same energy. So we have three states in the of same energy. So that's what is known as the degeneracy. So due to this quantum confinement, the energy states get quantized and some states get degenerated. So this is actually affect various properties of the nanomaterials. For a bulk material, we know the conduction band and valence band are superposed, so there is no band gap. So the motion of the electrons are not confined at all. So if we study the band structure of the metal that I have seen, this is the conduction band, this is the valence band, and no gap is there. Valence band is filled and conduction band is empty, although there are various vacant states. So free motion of electrons occurs, leading to high conductivity. But on decreasing the particle size of the metal to nanoscale, we have already seen that the energy becomes quantized, and a detailed calculation will show a band gap will be created between the valence band and the conduction band. So this occurs due to the confined motion of the electrons. So as a result, we see earlier the metal has no band gap, but now a band gap has been introduced in nanoscale. So the metal will no longer remains in metallic state. Rather, depending on the band gap, it may be an insulator or it may be a semiconductor. Let us see this example. The size dependent color of nanoparticle. Here you see a bulk gold, which is golden in sign. But if you take gold nanoparticles of size 30 to 500 nanometer, it's metallic, turbid, and crimson to blue color. And if we reduce the size within the range 3 to 30 nanometer, this gold nanoparticle appears red, although it will still have the metallic behavior. But if the size is get reduced less than a nanometer, then you have a gold cluster which is orange in color and it exhibits non-metallic property. That means quantization sets in. And if we reduce the size more, then it will become colorless. This is also the gold nanoparticles taken in different tubes, and so if we see here in the left image, we have the gold nanoparticles contained within these tubes, and the nanoparticles have different size, and under transmitted light they appear this color. But if the same nanomaterials are viewed in the reflected light, then the colors are completely different. This is because of the change in the scattering behavior of the light from the nanoparticles due to different in size. So now let us discuss the effect of the quantum confinement in case of semiconductor. As we have discussed, the band gap of the semiconductor enhances due to reduction in size. Here you can see when the size gets reduced, the band gap enhances. These sizes are typical values. So, for example, if we consider bulk zinc oxide, it has band gap of 3.37 electron volt. If its size goes below 10 nanometer, then the band gaps become 4.2. So the enhancement is 3.7 to 3.4 to 4.2, almost 0.8 electron volt, which is quite large. Now here I am showing the size dependent optical emission spectrum of cadmium selenium nanoparticles, or is quantum dot. Quantum dot, we discussed what is quantum dot. For the time being, you can remember that quantum dots are very small size nanoparticles. In fact, we say ultra fine nanoparticles. So here we see in different cuvettes we have cadmium selenium quantum dots of various size. Their size ranges from this 5.5 to 2.2 nanometer, and these are excited at 365 nanometer wavelength, and this shows the emission spectrum. So as we see, the cadmium selenium of particle size 5.5 nanometer shows red emission peaked at about 625 nanometer. If the size goes down to 2.3 nanometer, the emission peak shifts to 475 or 480 nanometer. So a large shift of the emission peak happens. Actually, the peak shifts on reducing the size. The peaks shift towards the lower wavelength, that is towards blue. That's why this is called blue shift, which is very important observations of quantum confinement in semiconductor nanocrystals. So here I am showing some other results taken from this paper. This shows the variation of band gap of cadmium sulfide nanoparticles or quantum dots. These dotted points are the experimental result. You see the variation of this band gap with the radius. The nanoparticles of radius 2.5 have band gap above 2.75, whereas when the particle size reduced to 0.5 nanometer, then the band gap enhanced to 4.7 nanometer. It's a very high. So this is a theoretical fitting of the band gap versus particle size using this formula. This is what is called the Brass equation, and as we see, it has three components. The first one is the bulk band gap, already what you can observe, and the second part is the effect of quantum confinement, and this is a positive term, so its effect is to enhance the band gap of the material. And the third term on the right hand side is a negative term. This is a Coulomb spinning term that actually gives a negative contribution to the band gap of the material. So, to summarize the various effect of quantum confinement, you see that due to quantum confinement, the electronic band structure of the materials gets changed. The states become discrete, the states becomes degenerate. As a result, the entire band structure changes. That leads to different types of electronic and optical properties exhibited by the nanomaterials. And also, we see a blue shift of the emission and absorption spectra due to this size reduction. And metals at nanoscale exhibit intense surface plasmon resonance, and semiconductor quantum dots shows a very intense fluorescence in the nanoscale, and these are potential applications in biomedical technology that will be discussed in the application part. So now let us discuss about general properties of nanomaterials. So let us discuss one by one. After discussing these properties, we shall look into various types of nanostructures. So as we have discussed already, this one, the large surface area, high surface to volume ratio in case of nanoparticles, leading to the high surface energy and surface reactivity like chemical sensor, solubility, catalytic property, etc. And at this point, it's customary to remember that gold in micro scale, that means whatever gold we see, this is metallic and very inactive. It do not have any catalytic property. But in nanoscale, this is an excellent catalyst. Now, second is the less crystal defect. The nanoparticles doesn't favor dislocations and point defects. These are actually thermodynamically less favored compared to bulk material. So the nanoparticle materials are structurally more perfect than the other microstructures. Their mechanical properties also get enhanced because their defects are reduced. So more perfections will be there, and they have strengthened mechanical properties that I will be discussing in the next exam. The nanomaterials have discrete energy state. So due to this quantum confinement effect and discretization, its energy band change that we have already discussed. I think I should not elaborate it here because it was already discussed. I shall go to the next section. The optical properties that has also been discussed during this quantum confinement effect. So the electrical properties of nanomaterials. In case of nanomaterials, due to quantum confinement, the mean free path, scattering, and collision behavior are completely different from the bulk material. As a result, a drastic change in the electrical properties are observed in nanostructure. For example, zinc oxide is semiconductor in nature, and at room temperature the conductivity is not so high. But in nanoscale, it becomes highly conducting. Also, we have seen the case of gold. In case of gold, it goes from metallic to non-metallic when its size reduced. So there is the possibility of transition from metal to insulator to semiconductor on reducing the size of the materials. The mechanical properties. As you have already mentioned, the nanoparticles have lesser defects, so its mechanical strength increases. It has been experimentally shown that for silicon nanoparticles of diameter 40 nanometer, around 40 nanometer, the hardness increases 4 times compared to the bulk silicon. The magnetic properties of nanomaterials. In bulk ferromagnetic materials, multiple domains are observed, as we have already learned in our general physics course. Some of them are aligned, while some others are randomly oriented. That leads to less magnetization. But in case of nanocrystal material, this multi-domain structure is not favored. This is because the high surface energy of the surface atoms in nanocrystal. It helps spontaneously to switch the polarization direction, leading to super paramagnetic behavior. It is also observed that for ferromagnetic material, the coercive field increases with lowering grain size up to critical values and then shows a tendency of decrease. Thermodynamic property of nanomaterials. As we have seen, in case of nanoparticles, the surface atoms are weakly bound by dangling bonds. So their surface atoms can diffuse very quickly at lower temperature than its bulk states. So the diffusion coefficient is much larger in case of nanomaterials. Besides, due to change in electron scattering, the entropy, specific heat, thermal expansion, melting point, etc. also get changed in case of nanomaterials. Is nano really a new, or it's already there in nature? So let us see. This shows very old paintings of 4th century, and you can find fantastic colors of these paintings. You can think of that these paints are made with different colors, obviously, but these paints are actually made of different size nanoparticles, gold and silvers. And as you have already seen during the quantum confinement, that depending on the size, gold nanoparticles reflect different colors. So if we see this painting, here you see the region 1 is dark blue, and in this region we can find silver nanoparticles of size 40 nanometer. In the second region, the color is celestial blue, and observation shows that it contains silver nanoparticles of size 80 nanometer. In the region 3, it's actually due to some resolution, the color is not clear. This color is a little bit shiny gold, which contains silver of 100 nanometer. As you know, the silver nanoparticles of large diameter have shiny gold. So, not only now, in the ancient time, people also knew about this technology, but not in the name of nanotechnology. So here is another example, the Leica Gasta. It is a famous and decorative glass that was actually developed by Roman around 4th century, long back. And the glass was alloyed with gold and silver nanoparticles of various size. And the distribution was such that this glass appears green when it is viewed through reflected light, and it appears red when it is viewed through transmitted light. Now let us see another example. This one is some Renaissance portraits, which is decorated with copper and silver nanoparticles, which exhibit excellent metallic luster and excellent colors, shiny metallic colors. This is a sword called which is mainly Damascus sword, and which mainly were used in 300 to 700 century, and these swords were very famous for their impressive strength, resistance, and exceptionally sharp cutting edge. Our study found that the sharp edge of the sword actually contains wire and tube-like carbon nanoparticles of diameter 50 nanometer, which enhance the strength of the sword, strength of the material, strength of the sword. So, we found that nano is not new, but rather it was already an existing technology, but not known in the name nano. Now, is there any nanostructures in nature? Obviously, there are varieties of nanostructures in nature. In fact, nature is full of nanostructures. That's why the nature is so beautiful. So here you see the beautiful wings of the butterfly showing different colors. Also, you can see the feather of the peacock, which shows an excellent shiny blue and green colors, and multiple colors also, some reddish these colors are also observed in this case. And this is the moth, and I am showing this compound eye also. And there is obviously the lotus leaf, which is an icon of purity. and as we know, it's very hydrophobic because water cannot persist on it, and in fact, dust particles also cannot stay on this. So the lotus leaf and lotus flower always remains clean. That's our icon of purity. So all these these natural resources are decorated with nanostructures in different ways. Now let us see the electron microscope image of these natural structures. So this is the ACM image of the butterfly wing. You can see a arrayed mesh-like structures, nanostructures existing in the scale. Here the scale is, you see, this is 1 micrometer. So these pores are about 50 nanometer, like that. This is, you see, the ACM image of the compound eye of moth. You can see small nanostructures over there. This is the ACM image. Actually, this is scanning electron microscope. I will discuss in the characterization section. But for the timing, you remember this is some electron microscope to observe these nanoscale objects. So this is the ACM image, which is showing a fine wires-like structures arranged regularly in the feather of the peacock. And this is the lotus leaf, and you see these nanoparticles are staying over this leaf, which is responsible for this hydrophobic property. So far we have discussed about the nanomaterials, but what should be the size of the nanometer? Is it 10-50 nanometers or few hundred, 200, 300 nanometers, 500, 700 nanometers, like that? To understand this, we have to remember the fact that every property of material, maybe bulk, maybe nano, whatever it be, and what type of material it is, every property of the material is always associated a critical length with it. Suppose, for example, the critical length for the resistance of a material is the scattering length. That means the resistivity arises due to the electron scattering in the material. So it depends on the scattering length. So scattering length is the length scale in case of bulk materials. That is the characteristic length actually. But if we reduce the dimension of the material so that the dimension becomes comparable to the size of the crystals, then the scattering phenomena will obviously change. Suppose, say, an electron has a mean path of 10 micron in some material. Now, if we reduce the size of the material so that crystallite size becomes less than few hundred nanometers, then what will happen? As the size is less than the scattering length, less than the mean free path, so the electron will not experience any scattering at all. So, as a result, what happens? The resistivity, conductivity, etc., these will be changed. So, what will be this length scale? In metals, we usually take the de Broglie wavelength as the measure of the length scale. And why we are taking this de Broglie wavelength, it will be discussed in a second webinar on quantum nanoengineering. But I think all of you know the de Broglie wavelength. As you have already mentioned, that all subatomic particles behave like waves, and the particle wavelength is known as de Broglie wavelength after de Broglie, and the wavelength is given by the time constant over the momentum of the particle. In case of semiconductor nanoparticles, the length scale is the excitonic Bohr radius, which is given by 4 pi epsilon h cross square over m square. And this m is taken as the effective mass of the electron. In case of electron, this is electron, this is so forth, this is volt. And what is exciton? I will discuss in the next coming session, so I shall discuss about the optical properties. In brief, I just discussing that if suppose we have an electron in the valence band, we supply energy so that it goes to the conduction band. Okay, so it leaves a hole in the valence band, and if the Coulombic interaction is strong, then there exists an electron hole pair, and depending on this dielectric strength, the Coulombic energy is 1 by 4 pi epsilon q by r square, so it's inversely proportional to 1 by epsilon. So if a material has very low dielectric constant, this Coulombic interaction is very high. So this electron hole pair is known as the exciton. So if this excitonic interaction is high, then this exciton is bound to an atom, and if for a material with a low dielectric constant, so that it's a high dielectric constant, so that it's Coulombic interaction is less, then this exciton can move over the interaction. That is called free exciton or one-mode exciton. So there are different kinds of exciton that I will discuss, but remember, in case of semiconductor, I shall use the length scale as the excitonic Bohr radius, and while in case of metal, I shall take this de Broglie length as the critical length. Now, we shall discuss about the classification of the nanomaterials, which is very much important. So far we have discussed varieties of nanomaterials. We have not seen yet. So let us categorize these nanomaterials into these 4 categories. The first one is 3-dimensional nanostructure. Actually, this is not nanostructure. This is mostly micro, in a transition between micro and nano, and it has a large size. That's why this is sometimes called bulk also. The second category is 2-dimensional nanostructures and pipets. The third category is 1-dimensional nanostructures, and the fourth one is 0-dimensional nanostructure. So let us discuss these one by one. So what is 3-dimensional nanostructures? As the name suggests, its size are very large or in all 3 dimensions. So let's see, this is there is some technical problem. Small nanoparticles. Actually, these are fine cubic structures, and you see its diameter sizes are about 500 micron, 500 nanometers. But still, it is far. Why it is far? Because we do not observe any kind of property change in this site. This also shows a silicon which is made porous by anodic etching. So this is a section that has been enlarged here, and if you enlarge this section, it will come like this, and if you enlarge this section, it will appear like this. So you can find micro pores in the silicon structures. So these are still treated as nanostructures because a very weak quantum confinement effect is observed in this structure. That's in this sense, these are 3-dimensional nanostructures. Here are some examples, some fantastic zinc oxide nanoparticles reported by various researchers also. So in these materials, no confinement effect is observed. So no quantization of energy, but still a little bit change in the energy spectrum is observed owing to the weak interaction. So and the degree of freedom of electron is obviously free in these nanostructures. Now let us see the energy. The energy is this is, if I write the energy of the conduction band PVC, and if you consider the energy of the valence band PVV, so this EC is equal to EC0, the base value, plus this quantization factor. And we see this is h cross square k square by 2m step. This k is the wave vector for the electron, and it shows a continuous behavior. No discretization is there, and the density of state goes over it for half. And you can readily derive, and you have already learned this in your solid state physics course. Now, we shall discuss about 2-dimensional nanomaterials, which are a good example of that is nanostructured thin films. You are all aware about different types of coating over glass that I will be actually discussing in application sections. you can put different types of nanoparticles in the glass so that it becomes anti-reflecting, it becomes hydrophobic, etc., etc. So what we do, we have a substrate and we grow only few layers, 2, 3, 4 layers of atoms over that substrate. So it is a very thin structure. It is extended in both say x and y direction, and in the z direction the thickness is very small, only 2-3 atomic length. So the electrons in these two-dimensional structures can move in this xy plane, but its motion is restricted in the z direction. That is about the width, thickness of the plane. So only one direction of the electron is quantized, and obviously the electron has 2 degrees of freedom and 1 degree of freedom is hindered. So the energy spectrum will be, this is the free carrier motion in 2 dimensions, and due to quantization of the third dimension that will be along the z axis, this is the quantization effect. That way what we have already shown in solution of Schrodinger equation, k equal to n pi by f. So this is the thing. So this is the quantization of energy on z axis. We have also already derived this in quantum mechanics and solution physics course, and we can also show that the density of states is independent of energy and shows some discrete state-like pattern. So thin films are really very important in fabricating various devices, and they are usually prepared by various type of method that I will also be discussing in our next section, that is fabrication of nanometers, which mainly includes chemical vapor deposition and physical vapor deposition, and these are potential applications in thin film transistors, thin film display, nanotransistor, microwave mechanical systems, etc. Now discuss about one-dimensional nanostructures. As the name suggests that the structure is one dimension. If we consider a rod-like, so it has a length about few microns, but the diameter about only say 10-15 nanometers. So the electron can move freely along the length of the rods, but its motion is restricted in other two directions. So this is the silicon nanowires and this is indium phosphide nanorods, where we can see that the electron can move only along one direction while the other two perpendicular directions are quantized. So these are some other examples of one-dimensional structures, that is nanotubes and pencil-like silicon nanostructures. So in this case, as the electron can move freely only along one direction, so this is the continuous energy spectrum along the x direction, while the energy gets quantized along other directions. So this is the expression for energy, and the density of state gives over e power minus half. So the example I have already mentioned, nanorods, nanowires, nanotubes, and here in case of one-dimensional structure, aspect ratio is very important. Aspect ratio means the length to radius or diameter. This ratio is very important in observing the quantization condition in case of one-dimensional nanometers. So now we shall go to the last one, that is zero-dimensional nanostructures or quantum dots. Here you see the gold nanoparticle, and this is the scale from here to here. This is 300 nanometers. So you see these nanoparticles, the diameter about 5 nanometers, 5 to 10 nanometers. Now you may ask how I am observing this small structure. That I will be explaining in the characterization section. Actually, these are observed in electron microscope, STR and TR. So this is also another kind of transmission electron microscopic image of that gold quantum dots. You see the size and the diameter of the nanoparticles are about 10 meters, and lattice patterns are quite clear. Here you can see the lattice pattern, the arrangement of the atom in this nanocrystal, perfect alignment of the atoms in this structure. So in these nanostructures, the size being small, the nanoparticles are confined in a place, so that we can say the
sorry, the non-nanoparticle, the electron is confined in this small region. So you can say that basically electron is trapped within this potential. So its degree of freedom is hindered, all the degree of freedom is hindered, and the energy becomes quantized in all three directions. So it has a density of states, delta function like spikes, as you can already, you have already learned this in your solid state physics course, or it is also discussed in the quantum nanoengineering course at a later stage. So quantum dots are really very have important applications in various kinds of devices, electronic devices, and biomedical applications that will be discussed in the applications. So these are the various types of nanostructure depending on the dimension of confinement, whether it is 2-dimensional confinement or 3-dimensional confinement. So one thing I must make clear here is that if we say a 2-dimensional nanomaterial, the motion is of the electron is supposed thin film, the electron's motion is restricted along z direction. So it is an 1-dimensional confinement. So remember this term, in 2-dimensional material the confinement is 1-dimensional confinement. In a 1-dimensional material, the electron can move along one direction and other 2 direction is confined. So this is a 1-dimensional structure, but the confinement is 2-dimensional. So the dimension of confinement and the dimension of nanostructures are two different issues that cannot be measured. So now we shall discuss about two terms, nanoscience and nanotechnology. All of are almost have heard these two terms, nanoscience and nanotechnology. So what is nanoscience? Nanoscience is basically the study of various properties of nanometers, like the size dependent optical properties, conductivity, thermal properties, to study this property so that we can correlate the structure property relationship. So that the particle size dependent band gap or particle size dependent strength, optical emissions, etc. So all this study falls in the nanoscience category. Whereas the nanotechnology refers to the use of these nanomaterials for various kinds of applications. As you know, the most common examples are LEDs and nano lasers, quantum dots, TV, display, LCD displays, etc. So these are actually the technology. It means the use of nanomaterials for different types of applications. Now we shall talk about two terms. One is nanobiotechnology or nanobiology, another is bio-nanotechnology. So nanobiotechnology is the study of the use of nanomaterials for different biological applications. That means we shall study the cell imaging, MRI scanning using the nanomaterials, etc., etc. That means we are using a nanoparticle and using for various biological applications. That is what is nanobiology. And bio-nanotechnology is the study of biological nanostructures. And we have already mentioned there are several biological nanostructures in our body. Suppose if we consider mitochondria, Golgi bodies, and other suborganisms, these are all biological structures that lies in the nanoscale. So we are studying this biological structure and monitoring these. So this is what is called bio-nanotechnology. Now this is the last section of this lecture, the advantages of nanomaterials. And their nanomaterials have varieties of properties leading the potential applications. These are multifunctional properties. I mean, what is multifunctional? Multifunctional means it has different properties that is simultaneous. Suppose if we consider of zinc oxide, it is optically transparent, it has good electrical conductivity, super hydrophobicity, and room temperature thermal. All properties are available at it, so that it can be used in different purposes. The same material can be used for different purposes, like transparent electrodes in solar cells, super thin surface coatings, and also in various electronic memory devices. So that is what is multifunctional. And one more example of use of zinc oxide nanoparticles is the development of ultraviolet laser, and it was first reported in 2001. The room temperature lasering of the zinc oxide nanorods grown over sapphire substrate, and a lot of research is going on, and ZNO-based nanolasers and LED are supposed to come in the market within 2-3 years. Because this company is already in a process of revising ZNO-based UV lasers and LED. So nanoparticles are energy efficient. That means they consume less power. So from economic point of view, these are very useful. So you have a common example. Earlier we used a filament bulb. Usually those were 40 watts, 60 watts, 100 watts or many more. But still the intensities are not to the mark. But now you all are using CFL, and nowadays you are using LED bulb, LED tubes, which are only 15 watt, 20 watt maximum. And you are getting intense luminescence because those devices use quantum dot, semiconductor quantum dot, which exhibit intense. And also the quantum dot TV is already in the market, which has excellent display and very low power consumption. And LEDs we have already seen. Now, if we talk about these nanoelectronic devices, if we see the development, we know the junction field effect transistors. There is a narrow channel. Scientists are using nanowires as a channel between source and drain. So carbon nanotubes also are used in the source and drain to enhance the conductivity of the channel and improve the performance, improve the gate efficiency, so that we can have less power consumption and more efficiency of the nanoelectronic devices. Single electron transistors is also a promising device that I will discuss in the next webinar. Okay, so this is the one famous law in nanoelectronics, which is Moore's law, which basically says the number of transistors on integrated circuit by a minimum component cost doubles in every 24 hours. This is an observation by Moore long back, and we can see his prediction that in 1971, when the CPU contains only 2300 transistors, and in 2008 we see it has few lakhs of transistors, and how also the size gets reduced. So miniaturization of the electronics. No, this is one of the fantastic example of nanomaterials. This is actually carbon nanotube based structure. Carbon nanotube I have not discussed because I will be discussing in the coming next lectures also. So here is Professor Ajay from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. What they have demonstrated, they have used carbon nanotubes and make water flow through this tube, and using some circuitry arrangement, they showed that a voltage is generated. If we see the data with a very low velocity of 10 to the power minus 4 meter per second, we have a voltage about 1.5 millivolt, which is sufficient to power a device. So from water flow, you can harvest energy. This can also be used in pacemaker source. So can you think of a pacemaker without battery? Yes, obviously, if this property can be utilized, we can use a pacemaker without any battery, because when the pacemaker is set, and there should be a channel through which the blood will circulate, and due to this flow, there should be the arrangement of this nanotube so that the energy is generated that will power up this pacemaker. So however, these are only some scientific models and scientific experiments and prototypes, because still industrial researches are going on. This is the zinc oxide nanostructures. All of us aware about piezoelectric effect. So what is that? We have a material, we imply mechanical vibration, it will provide electrical signals and vice versa. That means it will provide electrical signals. So here is Professor ZL Wang from Georgia Institute of Technology, Atlanta. His group fabricated a device which basically composed of zinc oxide nanoparticle. When they are stressed, so stressed under mechanical vibration, they produce electrical voltage that can power up a device. So maybe in the future we do not need any electrical charging to mobile. If we put the mobile in our pocket and it is designed with the nanogenerators films, the charge will get the battery will automatically get charged. We will not repair any kind of electrical charging system. This is one fantastic example of use of nanoparticles. So we know nanoparticles are found to be lighter. Still their hardness are large. He is Dr. Santanu Bhumika, Amrita University, actually originated from West Bengal, Paschim Medinipur, probably Jharkhand. Yes, his group has developed plastic-based nanocomposite and they have developed this bulletproof jacket, where the conventional bulletproof jacket has a weight 15-16 kg around that, but Professor Govind's developed jacket has weight only 1.5 kg. So this it is quite lighter. So it's quite a bright shine of the research in our country also. Okay. So nano devices are faster, as you see. If we consider the harmonic oscillators, the frequency those were 1 by R, so 1 by length. So when we are considering nano devices, we are reducing the size so that the frequency of frequency response becomes higher. So now particles can switch the performance faster without changing any kind of signal. This will be discussed in 5th lecture, nanoparticle based water purification. And this is one finest example of hydrophobic coating. That these things you may have seen in Amazon website. They are providing some coatings to have anti-fog mirrors. So it is nothing but a coating of nanoparticle placed over the glass, so that once the dust particles or water molecules are there, they will be repelled, so that they are not stuck, so that the viewfinder will remain clear. This can also be used in self-cleaning paints and also for displays for shoes and shirts, so that it remains super clean. These are already in the market. You can really see these are already in the market. You can also check in the various marketing issues. So this is another example of anti-reflection coating because the glass over here contains an anti-reflection coating, so that the reflection does not affect the view of these meters. Now, as discussed in brief, the biomedical application of nanometers, as we are running out of time. So, nanomaterials being very small in size, they can enter very easily into the small pores of the cell. That can be used for several biomedical applications. So, let us see. We can use nanoparticles. Usually, gold, silvers are nowadays under trial. We inject these particles. These particles will selectively attach to the cancer cell, and once they are excited, they produce fluorescence spectrum, and from that we can study the locations and amount of the cancerous cell present in the body or in the cell. Nanoparticles are also used in the drug delivery. We can functionalize nanomaterials and attach drug molecule with it, so that it can selectively attach to the cancer molecule. Because we see in the conventional chemotherapy, when the chemo radiation is given, so the radiation not only destroys the cancer cells, but it also destroys a lots of healthy cells of the body, so that the body becomes unbalanced. So it has a huge side effect. But if we use functionalized nanoparticles and loaded it with a drug, the nanoparticles will selectively attach to these cancer molecules and destroy them. So you can destroy only the unhealthy, damaged cancer cells without affecting the performance of the cancer. So tissue engineering and organ printing is also another growing branch of nanotechnology, where we can artificially generate tissue and artificially print organs, and also you can replace that organs. Although these are under development, and this is the one, I think this is the last one, the finest example of treating disease in the coming era is the nanorobots. What we have a small nanostructure. It has a micro camera attached to it, and it is a payload, which is basically the nanoparticle loaded with the drug, and has a capacitor which gets charged so that it powers up the energy. And these are the swimming cells, like the flagella of the bacteria. Bacteria, when it moves in plasma, they use this flagella. So this device has this flagella, and this can be controlled from outside. So this device can enter into our bloodstream and shows the image of various diseases, cells, etc. We can basically view the inner parts of our body. So this is the agricultural. There are huge applications in agriculture. I will just describe it brief because I have discussed it will discuss in lecture 4. That if you use nanopesticides, that means pesticides or any chemicals in nano form, that will spread quickly and will lead to lesser amount of those pesticides. I will be discussing this in the lecture 4 also. So the last I should conclude over here. Before concluding, I must say there is a wide varieties of carbon nanostructures, and carbon nanostructure based products are already in the market. I will be discussing in the next section because that will take a long time to discuss various types of carbon nanotubes, carbon nano architectures. So as I end up with different nano products here, these are already in the market. You see this antibacterial soap with nanoparticles, silver nanoparticles with filling foam, antiseptic hand sanitizer, and we already use this activated film for Lifebuoy Plus. And this is the charcoal toothpaste. So these are very common products now available in the market. Now, you may think of whether the use of these nanomaterials are really safe to our body or not. So let me give you an example. So when you are using these nano products, that means you are using some face wash or toothpaste or any kind of foam, etc. or soaps that have nanoparticles. After use, when you wash your face, hands, etc., these goes into the water, and this water is now then transferred to some soils in the or it can goes to some wetlands also. Or so these nanoparticles basically after use they get mixed with soils and water. Now, if the nanoparticles are reactive, they may interact with the soil microorganism, fauna, etc. And also, as a result, you see, if suppose in a pond, a huge wastewaters are released so that it contains toxic nanoparticles, the pisciculture will be greatly affected, and the water quality, water hardness, pH, etc. will be greatly changed. So there is a potential threat of these nanoparticles. So we have to understand various adverse effects of these nanoparticles before using these for practical application that I have already mentioned. I think in this lecture, I have given a brief overview of the entire nano science and technology, what are happening around the world,
And from the next lecture, I will be quite specific about the synthesis of the nanomaterials, their characterizations, and how affect the environment, I mean the toxic effect of the nanoparticles, and several biological applications. I will discuss in details in the state of art of nanotechnology in biological science. So I must conclude this session right here, and thank you very much for your listeners. Thank you very much.